Today, we're joined by Francis Cholle, a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author, international business consultant, and advisor to Fortune 500 and mid-sized companies. Francis lectures on leadership and innovation at Wharton, Columbia Business School, and HEC Paris. His background also includes classical music, theater, and clinical psychology, which gives him a unique perspective on how people think, adapt, and make decisions. Long before AI became the headline of the week, Francis was studying intuitive intelligence, the balance between logic, instinct, creativity, and human judgment. He also created the Intuitive Compass, a framework designed to help leaders navigate uncertainty, disruption, and rapid change. Today, we're not just talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about what it means to remain human, make better decisions, and lead with judgment in an AI-driven world.
Welcome to the NAPAICC Insider Podcast. My name is Scott Harris, and I have a very special guest here with me today. His name is Francis Cholle, and we're going to be discussing artificial intelligence versus intuitive intelligence. Can machines replace human judgment? This is a question that I've asked myself since the onset of AI. So today we have Francis Cholle. He is the founder and CEO of Solar Express AI. He is an author, international business consultant, and he's the creator of the Intuitive Compass. So who is Francis? Francis, before we talk about artificial intelligence, I'd like our audience to really get to understand who the person is behind the work. So if you could just indulge us on what kind of work that you've done over the years and the different paths that led you to this path and how intuitive thinking has really tied into business, analytical thinking, strategies, and things like that.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. I would enjoy having conversation with you. So I'm excited about today and humble that I will share with your audience. So a few words. So what we do, pretty much, we help organizations go through complex transformations. Yes, we do that at Solar Express AI because it's an AI native agency that we created to address the vertical of insurance. And it's a brainchild of the company that you see here called The Human Company. And the reason why I put that as a background, because I know you would be asking me about human intelligence versus AI intelligence. So I thought having the signature of The Human Company. So what does The Human Company do? As I said, we help large organizations around the world go through complex process of transformation. And we do this with an unusual approach, which is people first, people of a number for better numbers, pretty much. That's what it is.
Expound on that, just for a guy like me that doesn't really, grasp that particular concept.
Okay, so we understand numbers, right?
Yes.
And business is about numbers, and we all agree on this. It's the boxing ring that we get on every day. We need to score. The question is, how do you play the game? And even athletes in the Olympics are complaining that the training they receive is putting them under such an enormous pressure that is not the best way for them to get to performance. The same in business.
Interesting.
And we're talking about Olympics athletes. We're not talking about, Sunday runners.
Right.
So in business, it's the same, a lot of change management, I don't like that word. A lot of transformations that are being thought out in the C-suite with very, very smart people on both sides, clients and agencies. And then people come as an afterthought. And that doesn't work because the one who are going to be implementing the new solutions are people.
Yes.
I mean, even in the age of AI, still people. Yeah. And as we know, the most critical part of innovation is not ideation. It is implementation. Okay. So if you don't include people from the very beginning, people over numbers, which makes sense, that's where you want to end. But if you don't start with people, then you are compromising greatly your ability to see any innovation happen in your organization.
So are you kind of saying that you can be a conceptual person, you can create the idea, but without a good execution for people to actually witness that execution, they're not necessarily going to get behind you as an idea man in a company?
Yeah, but even before execution, because if you're back to execution, you will get the answer, well, we'll deal with them when they are about executing. No, it's the engagement of people from the very beginning. So first, it makes sense for them what's being done, what's being envisioned. But more importantly is where do I fit as an individual in the process of innovation?
Okay.
And that's rarely done. And
Right,
that's
because employers or companies that are in the process of any kind of growth, they look for very specific needs, generally speaking, versus possibly implementing a very specific culture. They want to meet the demands of their customer base or the business model, and therefore they're going to hire to meet those demands first. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, but their first customer that are employees.
yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is true.
That's but
Okay,
that's very
so let
different.
me ask you a question because I know that you have dealt a lot with intuitive intelligence. How does that play into working with Fortune 500 companies, working with businesses, working with small businesses or large businesses, or even athletes? How does that, what is that? What is that? Tell me about intuitive intelligence because it's
Yeah,
not something that people talk about. Are we just saying common sense?
yeah. No. Actually the opposite.
Okay.
It's commonly human. But it's paradoxical. It's usually questioning you in a way that you don't like because it doesn't give you a straight answer. It gives you some crooked answers, and like, what am I doing with this? So you set it aside and you go back to your linear, strategy-based, data-based. And let's pause for a minute on the word data. Everything is data-driven today, of course, because AI without data cannot reproduce anything. So very important to collect data, very important to have a structure to incorporate data and process data. However, um, people, it's crazy, but people use data, and what they're talking about is quantitative data.
Metrics
But
and
is
things
there,
like that, right?
sure, but is there
Performance
anything,
metrics and
but is there anything of meaning in your life, Scott? Let's pause for a second. Whether it's your children, your customers, your engagement to your own company, that doesn't require some qualitative data.
oh, wow, that's okay, so it's easy to answer that on the business side, right? Because I'm always looking at qualitative data, but on the personal side or family or friendships, things like that, I'll be honest, it didn't even occur to me to try to quantify the data behind any relationships outside of a business model.
But I'm not talking about quantitative data. I'm talking about qualitative data, qualitative data.
Okay.
You understand,
So,
so
so we have quantity of data, and then we go through a massive amount of data, and we're looking for the good stuff. We're looking for that data that really helps us in the ways that we want to be helped. And again, applying that to a personal relationship, my being a husband, being a father, being, a
yes.
friend. I've never thought about that, to be honest with you.
But okay, but look, if your kids come with bad scores, okay, so that's quantitative data. What is going to be the answer for your children to be better at school? Is it only about quantitative data, having them work more efficiently, being more disciplined? Of course, all of this matters, but most
Right.
of the time, it's an emotional challenge, whether with the teachers, with bullying at school, with the relationship with the father when it comes to math, supposedly, and for more literary, it would be more the relationship to the feminine energy in the parent structure. So anyway, those are just thoughts, but you will handle it by what is going on. You're not going to push with, okay, we're going to do two extra hours of math plus 1 hour of this plus. See, the
Right, right.
KPI can
We're
only
looking at your
apply
habits. We're going to look at,
context.
okay.
You're going to look at context, the
Again, I'm
relationship.
staying too analytical. I'm thinking about time management and I'm thinking about,
No,
the things that you could do to improve upon those things. And you're speaking to me on a very energetic level, a very almost a spiritual level when you think about it. But
a human level, a human level. I mean, look, Weight Watchers, okay? Lose calories. I mean, it's a metric. It's really
simple
easy to
formula, right?
a
Simple
very simple
formula.
formula, but it's still in business. So people
Yeah.
the formula doesn't work. Okay. It's more than that. It's emotional, it's community, it's support, it's self-esteem, trust, confidence, and you name it. So what applies to weight loss applies to every aspect of our lives, That's why we have behavioral science to really understand the motivation behind behaviors. I
Oh,
mean,
now behavioral
so
science is a terrible thing because it guides HR rooms, it guides a lot of different things. Thinking about, this conversation, it's kind of making me think, or it's pulling me in a direction of holistic thinking, to be honest
yeah.
with you. So what is that? What's going on with me right now? Why am I going into a holistic thought pattern in this conversation with you right now?
Because this is the only way life goes. Like everything is interdependent, that there's understanding organization as systems, all the pieces interact with one another. You can't just dominate one and everything follows. That worked in a world where hierarchical structures were adapted to a world where access to capital was giving you a dominant advantage. And that has blown up already with digital revolution, digital transformation, where Airbnb is probably one of the highest valuation in the hospitality industry when they don't own anything. So it started with a $5,000 software and a garage, and it
Right.
brought itself to the highest, capitalization in the
I
industry.
mean, this was Amazon. This was the founder of Exactimate started in a garage. I'll give you a real quick interesting story, not to interrupt you, but the founder of Exactimate was a contractor, and he was looking how to write a better estimate. That was his whole focus because contractors don't necessarily know the fine art of writing a very detailed estimate. His neighbor was a software programmer. They had a conversation, a few beers, and in the garage, they started building Exactimate, which was a solution to a problem that, they were trying to find a solution to a problem in the industry. And it ended up being a multi-billion-dollar necessity in the insurance world. I mean, every insurance company in the world uses it. So I just thought when you say, starting in the garage for the audience, a lot of things have started in the garage
Yeah,
and grown
yeah,
into really big developments. Would you
yeah,
agree?
yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes,
No, we're
absolutely.
still in the garage, Francis. We really are.
But the thing is, so when you enter a world where the level of disruption and change, is so fast and so deep and so pervasive, the old model of organizing work and thinking productivity and motivation doesn't work, and all the statistics show it. But I think what I see is organization trying to mend this, and change, but they do it in a way that still kind of instrumentalizes what the human capital.
Are we in a paradigm shift with AI?
I would say yes.
Okay, we're right on that edge where things are just going to change dramatically, and there's absolutely no going back. So, thinking paradoxically, how do you encourage leaders, future leaders like me, to adapt into this disruption? Because most people don't like change. Most people like complacency. They like stability. They like to know they have a 9 to 5 job with insurance. Their rent's going to get paid. Their mortgages will be paid. And here we are in this crazy paradigm of a new technology that's exploding. And I can see that you're really worried about it, because, through our conversations and your YouTube work and your other work, I can tell that you're really concerned about whether artificial intelligence can ever really replace humanity in the ways that humanity may be thinking that they wanted to replace them with. Does that make any sense?
Okay, so now we become very philosophical. Okay, but
I'm,
okay.
I'm, I'm sorry about that.
No, 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 no. But I mean, no, no, it's not a question. It's not a. Okay, well,
There
okay.
was a lot there to unpack, so do
Yeah, a
however
lot.
you want
No, but
to.
but that's always business. I'm a leader of an organization. What do I do with AI?
Yeah,
Okay. And what do I do with change? So, you have to, first of all, evaluate, what are the workflows, the processes that you have in place, the things that people do in a repeated manner, what kind of value do they bring? What is the cost to the organization? And what is the cost of technology to replace, the human interaction of that, the repetition of that workflow.
right.
So it's very detailed, it's very specific, it's very applied, it's very rational, it's
So if I have a
measured.
law firm and I have someone that I pay to do a lot of case study research for me, um, potentially that job may become outdated, whereas
Yeah.
AI could actually just do that research within a matter of minutes for me and give me a full breakdown of a presentation of whatever I'm looking for. My concern is that I don't really believe that artificial intelligence in the next 10 years, I'll be honest, 10 years, no matter how sophisticated it gets, it's not going to have that gut intuition that you talk about. I run a
Of
business
course.
off of a lot of gut
That's
intuition.
what, that's what I was trying to aim at. There is qualitative data. I don't know
Right.
any product launch that not involve some qualitative data in addition to quantitative data.
How do we merge that?
Well, okay. So I'm going to give you a simple example, okay? Because qualitative data and quantitative data don't serve the same purpose. So quantitative data is the volume, okay, of information allows us to predict some some
Future.
information.
Right.
Yeah, future decisions, etc. Qualitative data allows you to read between the lines. Okay, so two examples. One, in the pet industry, multi-billion dollar, huge, huge industry, they actually, through observation, qualitative observations of people who live and listen to consumers and do focus group qualitative, okay? And they realize that actually when you give a name, like a human name to your pet, as an owner, you'll spend probably more on your pet in terms of food than somebody who will call their dog by a typical dog's name.
Right.
Okay. So
Like
where do
dog.
you get this information? Okay. That's really, that's human-centric design thinking. It's like, you really empathize with the user, you try to understand their behaviors, etc. And you do that by sitting and listening to people, asking them smart questions and feeling what's there. That's empathy. AI will never be able to be empathetic. However, with enormous amount of data, you can go quiet, you can drill really thin, and really, really detailed, right? But there is still this moment called in advertising, like the creative leap, where you have to, from an insight, imagine a future. That's what Steve Jobs did, with
Yeah.
Apple. So, but it didn't create the biggest computer company. It became the biggest iPhone company,
He
which was not
didn't.
what they had set out for. Okay, so you need to be also willing to evolve. That's what every startup starts. With a certain idea of the business model, and then 2 years later they do something completely different because they found what really works and what are different, and when they can break through the market. So the problem with big, large organizations is that they sit on stable business model and their focus is on keeping that big, stable business model. That's what happened to Kodak. The legend has it that the solution, the digital camera, was on the desk
Most
of
people don't remember Kodak film, Kodak cameras, the
it's over.
disposables,
Yeah.
the
It
24-hour
feels like it.
drop-offs to develop the film. Most people don't remember any of that.
But the legend has it that the CEO had the solution on his desk, but he was
Yeah.
so busy defending the stable business model.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say here is organizations. So yes, AI, logic, evaluation, workflows, analysis, etc., but also really realizing that you've changed from being on the golf course, where yes, you measure, you apply and everything, to being in a jungle because disruption is by the day. I was talking to the CFO of L'Oreal, and he was telling me, Francis, I had like 4 disruptions in my entire career. And I'm telling youth today in the office, say, well, for you, it's every week, almost
Right.
every day. So you need to totally change the
Well, what
way
kind of
you,
disruptions are you seeing out there or hearing from people saying, what are the disruptions that you're getting feedback on?
well, I mean, I hope I mean, L'Oreal has now enabled itself, created internal capacities for creating messaging on social media. And I don't want to say the number because maybe it's confidential, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I understand.
That was at that lunch with the CFO, but that's huge amount of content. Okay.
Okay.
Huge amount of content that they can
And that
actually
created a
produce now.
disruption?
Well, I mean, that gives them a competitive advantage over others, because as we know, you need to be present and seen, top of mind, everything goes every day, moves so fast, etc. So you need to be able to run that race.
Right.
you know and they did it in a very interesting manner. They didn't think that AI was a subject of technology, it was a subject of human, and they took 1 year, they were 1 year ahead of everybody, because they jumped on the bandwagon, not from being limited by finding the best tech, but really putting people that were human first in their thinking and have been able to be very agile, produce training almost internally without any help of any consultant because they know their culture better than anybody else, and they immediately got a 1 year competitive advantage.
I see. I have two questions for you left, Francis, if you don't mind. Number one is what advice would you, we have thousands and thousands of kids coming out of college with
Yeah.
degrees every single year right now. What advice would you give any of them in the challenges that they're going to face with the disruption of AI or the challenges they're going to face that maybe I wouldn't have faced when I started this company 7 years ago?
Okay, so now you're touching an important subject for me because I created a nonprofit organization called the Know Better World, KNOW, you know better, the Know Better World Foundation, to teach children that they have the answers within,
Love this.
that formal training, is important, but they can find on YouTube. I'm not discouraging them from going to school because the socialization, the interaction, the collaboration, all of these are very important, and lots of subjects are important. However, in this age, of adaptation, that's the title of our book, Education in the Age of in the Age of Adaptation. Adaptation is we were all born natural adapters. So if anything, I would tell them street smart is a new PhD. Okay.
No kidding. No kidding. That's crazy because I mean, I grew up in Boston in 1970s. And if you know anybody that grew up in the 1970s in the city of Boston, we had plenty of street smarts, right? We were told to be home before the lights were turned off. We had the run of town. There was a lot of things, a lot of freedoms that we had. And we had to develop methods to be safe while we were roaming those streets as gangs of 5-year-olds with, little squirt guns and things like that, right? But street smarts, I mean, what's the difference between street smarts and common sense? Because I feel like people lack common sense quite a bit in today's day.
True. It's true too. But you know what? Get one day lost in the forest and you'll see whether it's common sense or whether it's street smart that gets you out of the woods.
Perfect, perfect example. And the last thing, Francis, is what are we not talking about that people should be talking about right now?
Sorry, what's the question? What
I'm
are we
sorry.
not?
What are we not as a society, as humanity, as a people, collectively? What are we not talking about that we should be talking about right now?
It's a good question. I don't know how I'm going to phrase it, but it's very obvious to me that this conversation about whether we should dominate AI or whether AI is going to dominate us, is to me the exact same conversation that we had with nature in the age of, the first Enlightenment in the 18th century, when we saw through perspective and Giotto and everything, we saw ourselves as the center of the universe, putting everything else in perspective from us.
Yeah,
So that very anthropocentric view of the world, I think the conversation is, but what does it mean to be human in a world that we don't dominate?
I agree with that 100%, my friend. Thank you very much. Francis, please tell everybody where they can find your information, whatever
Sure.
educational materials that you have out there, and how to get a hold of good information that you've just
Sure.
provided.
So the first thing is very simple because I'm on the only one on the planet who has that name, Francis, and my last name is Cholle. It's right on the here. So you can find us at The Human Company, thehumancompany.com. There's contact information there. Yes, and my LinkedIn, obviously, those are the two places. And then just, Google my name and some stuff will come up. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, we'd like to ask for your help. Producing conversations like this takes a tremendous amount of time, research, preparation, recording, editing, and fact-checking. We do it because we believe better information leads to better decisions, and better decisions lead to better outcomes. If you found value in today's conversation, the best way you can support our mission is simple. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who would benefit from hearing it. Every share helps us reach more homeowners, business owners, insurance professionals, and consumers who are looking for honest, thoughtful conversations about the issues that matter. Our mission is bigger than insurance claims. It's about changing the way people think about insurance, risk, leadership, technology, and consumer advocacy. Together, we can build a community that values knowledge over noise, facts over fear, and informed decisions over assumptions. Thank you for spending your time with us, and thank you for being part of the NAPAICC Insider community. I'm Scott Harris. We'll see you next time.